Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. Billy Embody, Dean Ralsky. We are up in the Gary Weber End Zone Complex on SMU's campus, about to recap day one of fall camp for the Mustangs. Some news and notes from practice, and Rhett Lashley and Kevin Jennings speaking with the media. All that and more on this On the Pony Express podcast, presented by our friends at Northwest Insurance Agency, which starts right now.
In today's economy, you need two jobs just to afford breakfast. Filling up your tank? Might as well finance it. But there's some good news. Northwest Insurance Agency can actually save you some money. Auto, home, business, and more custom coverage without the custom price tag. Northwest Insurance. Protect more. Spend less.
This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody. Billy Embody. 1, 2, 3, let we go.
That's right, fall camp is here, which means football is back on the hilltop and across college campuses around the country, and SMU is no different, coming in with a lot of work to get done before that first game against East Texas A&M. But it started today. Helmets, shoulder pad shells, nothing crazy out there flying around in shorts and shirts for SMU, but a lot of familiarity with this coaching staff, all returning for Rhett Lashley and this football team. A lot of new faces, as usual, for SMU and in this world of college football, but also some key leadership back. And Dean Ralsky, let's start off with this. Rhett Lashley announced it after day one of practice. Isaiah Wacobia, number 23, the Jerry Levias jersey, of course, honoring Jerry, who broke the color barrier in the Southwest Conference. And we saw him right out there. Usually in the past, they've done just, maybe a day of 12 for him, and then they announce it and switch him to 23. But no surprise here, SMU naming Isaiah Wacobia, who's getting some preseason All-American buzz, the Jerry Levias Jersey Award winner.
Yeah, he's getting the buzz nationally, and then, of course, from his teammates winning that award. Coach Lashley did say there were 4 players who got double-digit votes, which I think is no slight to Isaiah Wacobia, but more just a testament to the leadership on this football team. So, yeah, no surprise for Isaiah, and it's business as usual for him.
And for SMU, they get these 2 safeties back in Ahmad Moses and Isaiah Wacobia, and something that Rhett Lashley after practice talked a lot about, how much they have grown in the leadership role. And they do it a little differently. They're generally quieter guys on the football team, but when you lose a Jonathan McGill and Elijah Roberts and some of this other leadership they lost next year, they do need to be more than just actions speak louder than words type of guys. They need to step up and do that on-field leadership with their words as well. And that's the exciting maturation process as somebody who's watched Isaiah Wacobia and Ahmad Moses grow into these roles. I mean, it seems like yesterday Ahmad Moses flipped from UTSA on signing day. It was, I believe, the only kind of signing day news for Rhett and that staff, I believe their first year. And now he's turned into one of the best safeties. And for Isaiah Wacobia, he comes in basically having spent all summer with Ahmad. They trained together at SMU. They train with the same DB trainer outside of this campus. And it's just I think it's an exciting year. If you look at the 2 of the top 5 safeties in the ACC as far as PFF going into the season. And SMU, I don't think, plays the other 3 safeties. I could be wrong, but maybe there's a Miami safety in there. But it's just cool to see them getting the buzz because they are a duo and they both bring so much to the table out there.
Absolutely. They're dynamic. And I think the ACC preseason all first team comes out tomorrow, potentially. So we'll wait and see if they get a little bit more recognition. But, man, they're going to be so important early on in this season when that defensive line is figuring themselves out. And to your point, just the communication as well. We know they can make plays. 7 interceptions combined last year. They'll want to get to double digits this year. I mean, have truly breakout years. But they're also going to have to be so critical in terms of talking with the linebackers and with the secondary in those early season tests, and they're ready for it though.
And as we look back, day one is kind of a who's out there. Let's get some fresh pictures. Let's get some video, and whatever we get, we get. And as fall camp goes on at ontheponyexpress.com, sign up for just $1 for your first week. we'll get more takeaways. We'll get more into, okay, who's working out at this spot, and maybe this is a position battle that's emerging. And one position that I got a chance to look at while they were going through drills, and it's always a fun one, is Calvin Thibodeau's defensive line. And as much as he loves the big freaks, I want to shout out Coach Tibbs. It seems like he's not as big of a freak anymore. He's slimmed down, it looks like. So good for him. I need to do the same. But he does have some new faces out there. And Kevontae Spears comes in from Memphis, his first practice. Wu Spencer from Louisville, his first practice. You add a DeMarge Lewis, who has the size. It was his first practice because he was injured all of spring. And, you get Jeffrey Emba and Terry Webb back out there. You add Tyrone Winslow, who's got some nice size to that position. And it's probably one of the positions that, because of when we're allowed into practice, which is now 3 periods or so during fall camp, which is a little bit of a change, they do among the most work out there. And so it was a fun group to see with Coach Tibbs working those guys out. And then you have Demerick Gary being a defensive end assistant coach. You have Sam Dunham, of course, being the edge rushers coach and outside the bandit position. But Jakai Lang, we got to look at him. There are just a lot of changes along this defensive line. It's going to be fun to watch how those pan out.
Exactly. And it's exciting because that's probably the biggest question mark on this team is where does the production on the defensive line come? But you're starting to see they do have bodies now. And it's a question mark, not necessarily a worry. And you've got to think they're going to get some answers here sooner rather than later. One other guy I wanted to mention was Akeel Washington. He looked sharp at times during practice as well, and they're going to use him in a variety of ways.
Yeah, it's an intriguing bunch. And I think partly this is maybe why we're not allowed in practice as much, because you have a group that is going to be used in so many different ways. And now we're assuming a little bit, but when you look at Akeel Washington, you look at DJ Warner, you look at Jakai Lang, and of course you got Turbo back and Cam Robertson. You have all these different pieces, and that's where fall camp for SMU on the defensive side, I think, is going to be almost a little bit more of a what can we do, who fits, who deserves the snaps kind of thing than the offense, especially in that front seven, because you've got Alex Kilgore, who is really the lone snap guy at that linebacker position back. Justin Medlock and Brandon Maiazono both played a good bit, but they are, that's the main guy there. Yeah. And then they've got to figure out the rest of it, which Zakai Barker was out there with the first team. So the front seven for SMU could look very different this year.
It could look very different, but that doesn't mean it's going to take a step back. Now, it was super productive last year, but it's similar to the running back room. They had, an Elijah Roberts, a Jared Harrison Hunt, and a Jafar Harvey, some big-time contributors. Brashard Smith was the big-time contributor. But maybe it can just be more of all right, we've got 7 or 8 guys that can play valuable snaps for us. And so fall camp will be, okay, maybe this guy plays 20 instead of 10, or they'll figure out the numbers. Or at least heading into week 1, they'll figure out the numbers. I'm sure it'll change throughout the season too, but you're starting to see the room come together on paper.
Well, before we go any further on the podcast, of course, we're presented by our friend Mark Villasana, Northwest Insurance Agency. I want to mention one big thing here. Mark is sponsoring our season kickoff event, which is going to be at Manny's Tex-Mex in Lakewood, just off Mockingbird, and Sunday, August 17th, 10 a.m. to noon. And that's just kind of the reserve time we're going to have. But make sure you guys go to ontheponyexpress.com, grab your tickets for that event. $100 gets you buffet, Tex-Mex and breakfast tacos and all sorts of things. And then you get 2 drink tickets as well. But we'll also have special guests as well joining us for some special preseason interviews. So you never know who's going to show up at Manny's on August 17th. We're really looking forward to this event, kind of building it out for this first one. But we've already had double-digit people sign up on the site. So really pumped up about that. We appreciate Manny's for supporting us in that regard as well. It's going to be a great day to, just before the season, learn some final tidbits on the team. So appreciate Mark and our friends at Manny's. And, of course, if you go to any of Manny's 4 DFW locations and you mention the words queso, you get 10% off your food when you do dine in or carry out with our friends at Manny's. So make sure you check all that stuff out. We're really excited about that as we continue on counting down the days to football season getting going here. But, Dean, I want to bring up something that Rhett Lashley said at his press conference, and it was in his opening statement. feels like this is his best roster, in particular with depth. And I think that speaks a lot. I mean, you look at the team out there that we got, again, just a glimpse at today, there is a lot of depth. And if you followed our interviews over the summer with guys like Maurice Crum mentioned it at linebacker, some of these other position coaches, they have options. Rhett talked about the running back room. There's plenty of talent there. They might have to figure it out as a group rather than maybe one guy emerging as a star. And who knows, maybe somebody does. But you look at linebacker, they could end up playing 5-6 guys over the course of a game, and that'd be a very regular thing. So when we get out there and we see, Jordan Hudson, Romello Brinson at wide receiver on the outside, but then you get Isaiah Robertson, Dylan Goffney, you get some of these freshman guys, who are trying to step up. There's depth of options, and sometimes it's not necessarily a bad thing to get some fresh blood in there and see if somebody can emerge. And that's probably one of the bigger things, just being picked up today, is there is a lot of depth.
Absolutely. And it's important for SMU fans to remember, Coach Lashley mentioned it in his press conference as well. People didn't know who Brashard Smith was a year ago today. And even to a certain extent, a Matthew Hibner, right? So there are these pieces that, looking back on a season, you think, well, boy, what would SMU have done without these guys? But going into it, they didn't know what they had. And so you kind of have to keep that same mindset of, look, the staff is great at evaluations in high school ranks and in the transfer portal. So you can expect a couple guys that maybe not a lot of people are talking about right now to be key contributors for this team.
One of those key contributors that is back, of course, Kevin Jennings, the starting quarterback for SMU, enters this season. There's always competition, all the coach cliches and everything like that. But it's true. This team is built on competition. But Kevin Jennings being back and having that comfortability that he is the guy, he is the starter, working on the playbook with Rhett Lashley and the coaching staff and what he likes, what he doesn't. Those are some of the things that are important. But he also has, a thicker body. I mean, it's apparent. He last year going in, he's still kind of that skinny-ish guy. But this year, man, he just looks like he's grown up. Even if he hadn't been working out his hardest, he would have, just kind of grown physically in a way. But he really put in the work this offseason, and you saw a handful of plays that were really exciting to watch out of him today. Yeah,
and he talked about in his press conference too, just like you said, the comfortability. I mean, he just seems so smooth, less worried. Not that, again, his whole mindset is he's never high, never too low, but just looked really comfortable out there. Had a really amazing throw and catch by Romello Brinson in the tempo period today where, they talked about in the press conference Romello's vertical being about 40 inches. And so he can just go up and get those footballs. So he's got options as well to throw to, and he talked about that. But, yeah, he seemed really smooth and polished out there.
And you're seeing, again, our brief viewing periods, but you're seeing him build off of things that we see in early practice. The 7-on-7, he had a big throw to Matthew Hibner, I believe it was, and then he built on that in the team period towards the end of practice.
Yeah, and, the talent was never the question with Kevin Jennings. For a lot of people, they're going to want to see it in a football game and limit the turnovers before they get really excited. But, man, he made some throws today that would get anybody very excited.
And that's something we'll be, of course, watching and updating on our practice reports over at ontheponyexpress.com. But, I look at the offensive line, and this is a position that the prime example that Rhett kind of talked about at large is who's going to emerge. Because every year there are guys that emerge. And the offensive line has some really exciting pieces. You obviously return P.J. Williams, who was named to the Outland Trophy watch list this week. But then you also have some vets, some really nice pieces like Logan Barr went to ACC Media Days. Savion Byrd is back and looks the part. It's all day one. Everybody looks good. But, man, you get Andrew Chamblee as a backup right tackle, maybe backup left. Then you have the freshmen, Draymond Odoms and Abel Hoopy, who they've continued to talk up. Maybe they emerge late in the season. There's a lot of competition on that offensive line, but because of some of the pieces they brought in, I'm fairly confident it's going to be a better group than last year.
Yeah, and the competition doesn't mean a player isn't stepping up at a certain position. It's because there are multiple guys they feel comfortable with. I mean, people forget, Coach Lashley said Andrew Chamblee had the best spring out of anybody, and he's not going to, most likely, probably not going to start week one for SMU, but it's an incredible depth piece to have. And like you said, the freshmen could emerge at any point. And so it's an exciting group, and there's reason to believe it'll be better than last year's season.
So as SMU gets going in fall camp, some of the position battles are very apparent, some of them not as much, but one position that I really am interested to see what they do with is kind of that slot position, because we all know it was the Roger Daniels show. Jake Bailey got hurt, but he was another strong piece. But Ymir Knight, I got to look at him catching punts today. He's an intriguing piece. But man, I wonder with some of these new faces, if it's going to be an opportunity for somebody like an Isaiah Robertson to emerge. He is playing on the outside, but he has been talked up at length. You have a Jalen Cooper I think I saw him a little bit in the slot. So maybe they find different ways to get guys involved at some of these positions in the wide receiver room. And it is Jordan Hudson and Romello Brinson who are going to get the large amount of commentary or not commentary, but the large amount of discussion around them as they return. And it's very apparent that they are being trusted as the two outside guys. But you also have rotated a lot of wide receivers at SMU, and there are new faces where Mucci and Keyshawn Smith are no longer. So that is the way SMU has been able to win, whether it be on the defensive side and really on the offensive side as well, outside of Bouchard, is they've had depth, they've rotated, and they've been able to. I was looking at it yesterday. I mean, I think they had 8-9 guys over 200 yards last year at the receiver position. So does that continue, or do they really whittle it down at some of those spots?
And that'll be something to watch. And I think on the flip side of that, when you talk about these key out-of-conference early matchup games, the defense won't know really what to look like, because maybe the offense doesn't have all the answers. You've got so many options on the outside and in slot, and fall camp will start to figure that out. But yeah, listening to Kevin Jennings, it sounded like Ymir Knight had a really good day, and he's, I would guess, you're starting slot wide receiver, but that doesn't mean he's going to play 90% of the snaps. They've got options, but they've got those veteran guys, but it's just how quickly can these young players really step in and be trusted.
Yeah. We do want to remind you, we are also presented by our friends at StatusJet, statusjet.com. Reach out to David Henry and his team today. I saw David had a little moment with Scotty Scheffler's newest hardware on his Instagram from the Open. And he's turning his attention now to getting everybody set for football season, making sure you guys have the experience of a lifetime when you book with StatusJet. Make sure you reach out to StatusJet today to make sure that you get your bases covered on traveling to some of these places like Clemson. That's hard to get to. Maybe a long flight up to Boston as well. They can handle all of that for you, and they can fly you anywhere. So make sure you mention ontheponyexpress.com sent you and get your discount on a round trip flight today with our friends at statusjet.com. Also want to remind you guys about our friends at the Thomas Auto Group. Find out about the Thomas Promise today at any of their 4 dealerships up in McKinney: Ford, Subaru, Volkswagen, and Mitsubishi. Thomas Auto Group will give you employee pricing on a new or pre-owned vehicle when you tell them that On the Pony Express sent you. So make sure you see Brandon Thomas and his family today. Brandon was also over there seeing Scotty Scheffler bring home the claret jug. So pretty cool summer for him as well. So make sure you support those two SMU alums as well, StatusJet and our friends at the Thomas Auto Group. Dean, the rest of the week for us, we've got Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We get the day off on Sunday, just like the team does, but it is going to turn a little bit more physical starting, I believe, on Sunday. They'll get into pads, maybe Friday, but they'll start really scrimmaging doing all those things. But one of the things that really caught my eye today was how competitive it was, even in shorts, jerseys, and helmets. I thought there were a lot of physical plays on the ball when we were in there, a lot of hand checking and physicality between the wide receivers and cornerbacks. Mm-hmm. And speaking of corner, we got our first look at Marcellus Barnes, the Syracuse transfer who's coming in and right now on day one playing on the second team. And we'll see a lot of that. And if you're watching the practice highlights on our YouTube channel, or if you catch them on the site, it's worth noting that this is day one. A lot of the vets, and there are vets on this team, but a lot of the vets get the first snaps or this early in camp. Yeah. And, Jalen Davis-Robinson and Deuce Harmon were out there with the ones. You had Kyron Chambers at the nickel spot, and then Ahmad Moses and Isaiah Wacobia patrolling the secondary. But I think there's a strong chance that, one, Marcellus Barnes starts. Two, you end up seeing something kind of totally different on the defense day in, day out when we're out there, because there is so much competition along that defensive line. I think there's so many different pieces they can deploy out there. And at the same time, man, this physicality that fall camp is starting with, I think this just speaks to the culture being really, really in place and in a strong spot where they can go out there and trust these guys to practice the right way, but also be physical.
Yeah, and Coach Lashley always says they're chasing the standard, and that's more than just a saying. I mean, they got to the ACC championship last year. They know, a lot of the players on this team will know what it takes to get back there, and they know that doesn't start week one when you pick up your first win or whenever that is. That starts really even before now and going back into the spring. But Marcellus Barnes and really the whole team, I mean, if you're watching the videos and trying to figure out the depth chart, I'm not sure you're going to do yourself too much good throughout fall camp, because they're just going to mix players in and out. We've talked about the competition on this podcast. There's just so much of it at every position that they're going to try a bunch of different things and see what sticks.
Yeah, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I think them having that East Texas A&M game to start is nice. Obviously, they got to show up and take care of business and not overlook them as Baylor comes to Ford the next week. But this is probably a different mindset, because the first 2 years of the Rhett Lashley era, it was still changing over the culture, doing this, doing that. Obviously, 2024 was different, going on the road at Nevada, and obviously kind of having all the ACC stuff around them a little different. This season, I think, and this doesn't have anything to do with fall camp in a sense, but it also does. You get one game where you should be able to kind of roll out the guys you feel like are starters, but also give others some live reps to really make an impact. So I think for SMU, that is something maybe the coaches have in the back of their minds. They might not share with the guys, but it is a different feel to fall camp, because you think they could kind of let their position battles kind of play out into the season. And that's something that is a little unique in a sense with having this tune-up game. And it's something we'll have to kind of remember as fall camp rolls along too.
Yeah, and I just think one position that could be a big benefactor of that tune-up game is the tight end position. When you look at, an RJ Maryland, who was out at practice, in the end.
Good point. We didn't talk about that.
Yeah, but he was out there running routes at 100%, was wearing a no-contact jersey. But that tight end room where, maybe you don't have to play RJ Maryland much, if at all, but it allows you to play a Trip Reard and an Adam Moore and get those live game reps, so that when you play a Baylor week 2, it's okay. If we want to throw out some different sets, who's that tight end? Who are the tight ends we want to put out on the field?
Yeah, Rhett Lashley saying after practice that RJ Maryland might never take contact in practice again, just keep him in a bubble wrap. Keep him in a red jersey, keep him healthy. They are going to ramp up with him, is what he said. It is one of those things where he's running, he's in every drill, but he's also non-contact. So they're going to keep him very, very safe. Probably second safest guy on the team besides Kevin Jennings, I would say, in fall camp. But it was good to see RJ out there. There's a couple freshmen that caught my eye physically, and we'll kind of end on this. But one guy that I think really looks the part. And one who has also really improved physically is Zay Gentry. His first practice today, he really looks the part physically. I like what I saw out of him. Just looks like he just bulked up from when I saw him watching spring practices. And he'll get a shot to kind of maybe unseat like a Speedy Nettles as somebody that can get some snaps at corner. Maybe they end up throwing him out there for some snaps against some of these other teams as they get ready for the season and game one in particular, get some snaps. But on the flip side, so to speak, of that, somebody who was here for January to get ready for spring and then get rolling in spring ball is Javion Holiday. And I felt like he really improved physically. You could tell he added some weight in his legs. And I don't know if either one of those guys end up being guys that play a lot over the course of fall. It depends on obviously them, but it also depends on some of the guys that they have returning at the corner position. But both of those guys, look like they're a little bit more ready to play than they were in the spring.
And in a sense, maybe you don't want them to play because the older corner guys are stepping up, but it's a big opportunity for them because they will have opportunities. Again, Javion was here in the spring, but for Zay, maybe he gets a few reps in that week 1 game, and that's his equivalent of being thrown into the deep end, because all the freshmen that were here in the spring were what we've been told, we're just kind of thrown into the deep end and seeing what they could handle. So it'll be fun to watch them develop really day by day as the fall game. goes on.
So with that, Dean, everybody out there watching us live, whether it be on Twitter or on YouTube, thank you guys for joining us for this edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. Really excited to kind of do some of these live podcasts over the course of fall camp and get locked in for SMU football as they get ready for the 2025 season. It's just day one, but we want to thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll have a lot more coverage at ontheponyexpress.com. Subscribe for just $1 for your first week, and we will get you guys all taken care of on everything to know from SMU football practice. So with that, we want to shut down this edition of the podcast. Thanks for joining, and shout out to our guy, Mark Villasana, Northwest Insurance Agency, David Henry, Status Jet, Brandon Thomas, and the Thomas Auto Group, and as well as Manny's, say queso for 10% off your order today. So we'll see you guys at Manny's for our August 17th fall kickoff event. And we will also see you guys this Friday at the Coit and Campbell location for a little lunch with some of our subscribers. So chime in on the board if you plan on attending Friday as well. Just a little casual lunch to kick off fall camp. So we appreciate all you guys for tuning in, and we will catch you guys next time on another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU3 and on Instagram at On3SMU. And keep it locked to OnThePonyExpress.com for more coverage.